film, which I think are kind of interesting from that perspective, because what we're dealing with consensual non-consent here. So I don't know if you could elaborate a little bit on how that took place, and sort of both up to and during the filming.
Yeah, I can start with that. We, of course, had a lot of negotiating beforehand. We did some trial, like play scenes, just to know each other's bodies, know each other's like body language, and yeah, also for me to like have a better judgment on how far can I take things and how does Hannah respond to different things. And during the scene, of course, there's a lot of stuff where I checked in with her and we talked about stuff. That's cut from the final scene of the movie. Though at one point there is a safe word being given in the movie very quietly, but Hannah does call a mercy at some point, and I take stuff down a little bit.
Also, I can explain mercy, and I can also explain like the way I use safe words and things like that. So, in general, of course, in BDSM and in many other spaces, you can use safe words. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the concept of a safe word. But the way that I like to do them is, many of us use the traffic light system, where red means stop and check in, yellow means, okay, whatever you're doing right now, I really need a break from, so like take it easy. And move on to something else. I often like to use mercy instead of yellow because I think it's sexier. And it's something where you can say mercy, and then it doesn't feel silly to say, and the scene can continue and you can get a break. And so yes, I did mercy when he was digging a nail into my side. That was a bit much at that point. And yeah, I'm curious what you said. There were some moments in the film. Please continue on with what you're going to say.
Well, I think one of the ones where early on in the film with the bull clips you have on the and you were saying stop, 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 and of course that's not the safe word. So and so I was kind of interested, but it seemed that you did respond at some point during that where Cherry says stop, 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 and it was almost like you responded, but I wasn't sure if that was just if that was a response to Cherry or it was part of the play.
I think at that point it was still part of the play, not necessarily stopping because Hannah wanted to stop, maybe more stopping because Hannah got really loud, or like it was continuing for like a long time.
Yeah.
So like let's take a break and do something else and then go back to it.
Yeah.
And mainly because Hannah got too loud.
I didn't realize how loud I was in this film until I watched it and I was like, Jesus, why didn't they gag me? I'm screaming so much, it's ridiculous. And it's shrill, it's horrible, I'm sorry for that. That's like the worst torture for you. But no, stop is not a safe word, fuck you is not a safe word. So that, yeah, I wouldn't say he stopped because I said so.
No, that's what I wasn't sure if it was because it was on the edge, and like you said, she said it a lot, so it was like, okay, maybe I responded.
No, that's what red's for.
Yeah, exactly. So the other question I was thinking of is how much was mapped out beforehand? Did you know the sequence of events? I had a little bit of insight, and Sophie said that this was from about 4 hours of footage, so I'm kind of interested in how much you knew beforehand about the sequence and where you were going and so on.
The sequence was pretty much mapped out. Like we had different positions mapped out. The construction we built for it can do like many different positions. So we had like an order of, we're going to do 20 minutes of this and we're going to do everything up, we adjust it to a different thing, and then continue. But the specifics of what's happening and how long was not that planned, but some of like the bigger stuff were planned for sure.
Yeah, and as you said, so the actual, when we actually did it, it was about 4 hours straight of like pretty much continuous torture. We cut out a lot of stuff, and like entire scenes as well were cut out in like an entire position, and So yeah, we definitely were like, okay, if we're gonna do this again, we're gonna do way less, because it's, yeah, we tried to do so much in what ended up being still a 40-minute film, but yeah.
What I was kind of interested in, sorry, stop the microphone thing. Okay, so what I was interested in was also, it seemed to me that we could see the camera people in the film. We could see them moving around. Was that just? I mean, obviously, it gave you more options in terms of editing and so on, and being able to get closer and so on. But was there another kind of thought behind keeping them in that?
Yes, definitely. And like I said, I'm very inspired by insect stuff as well. And I really, when I first concepted this idea, I wanted it to almost be like this footage was being taken by these captors who were going to, you know, use it to show to people who might sell me on the black market, whatever it might be. And I really like the impersonalness of there's just people around, there's people smoking cigarettes, or just like, you know, working, and they're so casual and detached. And I really love like how the film ended up, because this film is such a collaboration as well, so it's like many different ideas coming together. And so it's super theatrical and cinematic as it is now, but in the beginning, in my head, I was like, okay, maybe it's just super cold and super detached, and you just have these people walking around watching you, and just like leaning on a pole, like watching me. And so yeah, it was very much intentional to have these people just there.
I think my sense of it, and I don't know how it affected anybody else, but my sense of it was that it just kept reminding us of the constructed nature of what was happening. And I think, given that this is quite extreme stuff we're dealing with here, that it was useful in that sense to keep us sort of, okay, take a breath. You can see the camera's there, it's the lights there. You know, it's a constructed reality. But you know, that's just my interpretation. So, I mean, and something I'm fascinated by, and this, when the first hook goes in, you probably all remember the scene, right? When the first hook goes in, it's almost like you don't make any sound, and when the second goes in, it's like something kicks in. Could you say something about the mental state, or where you were at that point, what happened?
Yeah, and I know some of you haven't seen it yet, and so, you know, these are all just teasers. So I'll try not to give too many spoilers, but there's hooks in it. Yeah, I think so at that point, and this was in real life, this was after like over 3 hours of torture. And so I was a broken woman. And you also notice, well, because we've talked about how much I'm screaming and everything, and so if there's a point where I'm quite like quiet as well, it's like I'm not even here anymore, or I'm just like, I realize there's no in a more fantasy way of thinking about it, there's no point in screaming, and I just have to kind of like breathe with it and accept it. And in terms of the actual reality of where my head was at that point, I was genuinely terrified when the hooks happened, because this isn't necessarily good practice, but we didn't do the hooks in the neck before we did it. Like, we never tried that before we did it. But we trusted each other. And I was so fucked. I was just like actually really scared, but in a good way. I was still very capable of stopping it if I needed to. And I was just like, okay, no screaming. I'm just gonna breathe. Like, just want to breathe and get through this. And I'm so glad I did. That was such a powerful moment, especially what happens after as well.
I mean, a little bit on the same track. I was thinking about the question of pleasure in this, and in this kind of play, this kind of scene. If we take our film goggles off for a moment, and could you say something a little bit about that? It's, you know, it's, again, we talked about it's quite extreme, and I'm asking the stupid questions here. So I'd like to delve a little bit into where the question of pleasure comes in. How does that, in that kind of play?
Yeah, I think it's often a very good question when it comes to masochistic play in general, because you see somebody going through intense or not very intense pain, and you wonder, especially if you're not experienced with any sort of masochism, how, like, why would someone choose to do these things? Why would someone choose to experience this pain? And so I think the concept of pleasure in general is very complicated in our brains, and how close pleasure and pain, or like fear and arousal, are linked, and how you can play with these themes within the mind. And for me, a lot of the pleasure comes from the fact that I am like being ripped into my body and being forced to, experience everything now. And it's masochism is beyond pleasure really for me. It's much more of a mindfulness experience almost. It's something where, I struggle with ADHD and being very much in my head and being overstimulated, as many of us are. And intense pain practices is like, okay, I have to be here right now. I can't think about anything else in the world. I can't be anywhere else other than right here in my body. And so that's one element. And another element is you're literally getting pumped full of endorphins from the pain. So that's very pleasurable. And then the relief afterwards is incredible. And anybody who's done intense workouts, or has had a runner's high, or has done a sauna as well, you put yourself through something quite intense, and then the fact that you're still alive and you're still walking and you're like okay after, and you have the power to take care of yourself after, is incredibly empowering. And it's like, and it gives you, for me, I get such an enormous respect for, and like respect for my body, and like I'm very forgetting the word right now, but yeah, it's just an incredible experience of appreciating this body that carries me and what it can do. It was a bit of a long and like broad answer, but it's a pleasure. It's very multifaceted, is the point.
Perfect. I would also like to talk about aftercare. Just that's obviously not what's shown here, so that's
Put the box.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. And maybe you could have some comments about this, because you're in a particularly harsh role there, Louis. So maybe you have some thoughts about aftercare in a situation like this.
It's of course very, very important. And after shooting everything, me and Hannah sat down. We had our little corner, and we had a blanket and some snacks, and we were like just talking and like talking it out. And while everyone else cleaned up and took down all the film set and everything, and yeah, that was a really good time. And that was of course something that we had planned. Like Hannah told me specifics of what she wanted and how she would want it.
Yeah, and aftercare in general is of course really important, because it brings you back, it like allows your nervous system to come back to earth, and allows you to know that what just happened is okay, and you've just gone through this very intense thing, and you're actually still safe, and you're all right. And I want to give a shout out to Kate over there in the behind the bar right now, because the next day the person who took care of me was that lovely woman over there. I just ended up going home with her, sleeping at her place, and the next day we just like watched films and ate popcorn and ice cream, and just was like, took a lot of time to just like settle and be safe and cozy and nice, and like bask in it and tend to my wounds and so aftercare was a full day of it for me. Beautiful.
On that note, I think we should say thank you, and then we'll open the floor. So thanks very much. So I don't know how this works. I don't know how long this cable is, but so are there any questions from the floor for Jerry and Louis?
Yeah, I'm super interested to know the pleasure perspective from the dominating part of the sadist. I don't know
Yes.
what you like to call it. Maybe you said repeat the question.
I can repeat that again. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call myself much of a sadist, maybe just a little bit. I think in this case it was more a facilitator that like brought me into this movie. Hearing everything Hannah just said before, and like knowing that I can provide that, I can like facilitate that, and then of course also get a shared high, like when I see her like eyes and she's like pumping with endorphins, like that also like starts my brain to like do some of the same stuff. So yeah, that was my pleasure.
Such an empath. Wow.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Any more questions from the floor?
I have one. So yeah, so basically, so in the movie there's a lot of masked assailants, right? Yeah, so maybe I don't know if that was your guys' decision or somebody else, but like, why didn't you put extra focus on you? Like, why were you not in, I don't know, gray, or was there any particular thoughts behind that?
Did everyone hear that?
I can read. I have some thoughts. Did you have thoughts?
No.
I have thoughts. I have thoughts. Yeah, you're just a big himbo. So the question was about everybody else had masks on, and why wasn't there any attention on like Louis, or why was
uniform?
Or like uniform difference, right? Like why didn't he have something that had him stand out? Was that correct? Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's not really about like the individual, and it's this film is very much about the suffering and breaking down of this woman, you know. And so it's not that Louis is special. It happened to be his job that day to do the torture, you know. So like in this group of abductees or abductors, he was like, it's my turn to do all the torturing. It's my job today. And it's not because he's anyone special or he's a certain kind of like whatever, he's the head honcho. It's just another job, basically. And that was what I was going for.
So it kind of downplays the connection between the two of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I also think it could also play into that it wasn't necessarily me who did all the things. Like, I was the one doing them, but it could have been like we were several people. We were all like having the same clothes. Everybody did it, but mostly I did it.
You did have green shoes, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Something about shoes then?
I would like to ask a question. What is the idea behind that you don't show the aftercare? I mean, to me personally, everything is about the connection, and of course that's something else. This movie. So I'm just wondering, what is the idea behind showing so little connection and not showing the aftercare?
Because I really wanted this film to fully be a fantasy. I wanted to create something that could show like an absolute total fantasy, and of course we know, and also through Bedside and our transparency around it, that I'm here right now saying I'm okay, and I really wanted to do all these things, but within the context of the film, this is my fantasy, and I think it's really wonderful and really important when places like kink.com or whatever do show aftercare, because that's also extremely important to share. But in this particular film, it's like, no, this is my fantasy, and in my fantasy there is no aftercare. Of course, in reality there is, and I will always want it, and no one should ever model what they do off of this film, in the same way nobody should ever model sex or play or what they do with another person entirely off of porn, because there's so much more that isn't seen. So yes, I wanted to keep it away because this is completely a fabrication. This is a fantasy of my own, of our making, and no niceness in it. Extra material.
That's what I wanted to say. On the website, when it's going to be on Bedside, we have filmed some extra material, some talks afterwards that's going to be linked with it, and also linked with Bedside's education system with a a lot of other talks about consent and safety and everything.
Yes. I think you first.
Yeah,
Aiden.
in a lot of BDSM porn, you will have there is a lot of explicit penetration blowjob scenes. So it's very much for the male gaze. I can't find a better word. Sorry for all my queer folks, including myself. Was it intentional that you didn't have the male gaze, or the very sexualized physical acts? Was it intentional you didn't include that?
For sure, it wasn't. Yeah, we didn't want it to be a sexual movie.
Yeah.
I think the sex parts in it are not supposed to be sexual,
No.
and it's more of like breaking down Hannah than it's for anyone's pleasure. I also think that it's also shown. I feel like that it's, as Hannah said before, it's the torture just a job. They're just there to do a job. They're not there to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like you enjoyed it either while you were doing it. You very got the sense of it was a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also because it's not done by the male gaze. It's like my fantasy.
Yeah.
And so in my fantasies regarding these things, anytime there's like sex involved and penetration or things like that involved, it's another tool for my own humiliation or my own degradation. So like being in a place where I'm being turned into an object, it's more about that, and like watching my face as it just like, it's this like final really humiliating degradation. It's not about penis go in the hole, nice, it's like it's a tool, a very specific tool.
And although we did have to cut out quite a lot of the part where you do this, I didn't.
Yeah, okay. I was maybe enjoying myself too much at times, and it didn't fit the whole film, whatever.
It's interesting you mentioned the thing about the focus on your face. I mean, as I said, I've seen it 3 times now, and the third time, what I really noticed was just all the concentration on your face, on your eyes. And exactly that scene when you are being penetrated, we're focused on your face. We're not seeing, the money shot or the, it's your face, which was interesting.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, Hannah, because thank you for an amazing film, first of all, really loved it. And I was also very moved by the aesthetics, the cinematics, and especially the sound design was really amazing. And I felt like I was sucked into your fantasy in many ways. But I was curious if there was anything that this film didn't convey in terms of the fantasy you wanted to convey.
Yeah, I guess kind of what I alluded to earlier. I don't think that there's anything I would change about the film at all in its current form. I would only say that it has evolved from my initial imagining of it, which I don't think is a bad thing whatsoever. I really love where it is now, and like I said, I love that it's a collaboration, because I mean, as much as we talk about it as like my fantasy and this and that, it's not just my film, it's all of us who is involved, and none of it would be the same without every single person who was a part of the process and like bringing their own vision to what it is. But I can say in my initial imagining of it, it was much more like cold and disconnected, and without like especially the music. I didn't imagine it with almost very moving like sounds and very emotionally charged sounds. Something a bit more just like static and distanced. But as I see it, as it is now, I'm like, wow, this is really powerful and really beautiful. And I love seeing what all the different creatives that were part of it, what it drew out of them, and seeing what they wanted to bring of themselves to this film. So I'm very happy with that element of it. I think it's just really beautiful to see that.
There was another question.
Yep.
Yes, we have a question. I don't want to spoil anything
Was my
Your friends?
oh
Yes.
no. That wouldn't be very nice. Yes, no. That part was that would be. It's like I said, it was 4 hours. You all will understand what we're talking about when you see it if you haven't seen it yet. Yes, no, my friend, and that was, by the way, that was also my lovely aftercare person, Kate over there. Sorry, Kate, I'm outing you. So well done, Kate, for that. Yeah, you'll find out what we're talking about later.
I have one question about that very final shot there. Was that a GoPro camera or something, or was it on your? Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay.
What are we talking about?
So, any further questions, Jen?
Yeah, just one last one. Amazing film. Do you have any mandatory wishes for the film? You know, like now a lot of people have seen it, maybe they're not already into this, but of course it's an internal wish to make this film. But do you have any like mandatory wishes or goals? Have you even thought about that?
Can you define the word for me? I'm a dumb bitch.
Just like it's for the viewers who didn't pick this because it's their kink, because that's what they wish to do.
Yeah.
So if you show this to anyone who hasn't seen it, is there like a political, like libertarian wish, or is there anything that you like people who haven't expected anything to
Yes.
take from this film? What would it be?
Thank you for asking. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, no, I will say, no, I think, and I am actually glad, I was just talking about this outside, that when I watched it, I was thinking, I wonder if people are going to wonder what, like, big meaning there is, or why I'm going to make this thing, and the reality is, I just wanted to. Like, I just love it, and I wanted to do it, and there's no message about feminism or about, like, you know, this or that. It's just, I wanted to make this thing, this is my fantasy, and I wanted to show it. If there is anything that I would like to convey, it's that you can make something this brutal and this intense, and do it ethically, and do it with care and with love, because I think many people, and I actually will say, this doesn't just go for hardcore porn, hardcore BDSM, but any porn that you see, the softest porn that you see, when you watch it, you're like, are these people okay? You know, and the fact is, everything that you see or will see in this film looks very violent, but some of the most softcore porn out there is far more violent and far more damaging. And so I want to show it has that the violence or the harm is not in the act. It's not in the aggression or in the you know, how much you're hitting a person or whatever you're doing. It's in how you care for the person and the respect that you give the person. So if there's anything, it would be that.
Yes.
You started to answer my question outside and you were like, save it for the Q&A. So I saved it for the Q&A a little bit, but it kind of follows on really well from that previous answer, that actually what we were watching there, it seemed, was a genuine human experience. Because I asked you what was it like to be a performer, but you're not, it felt like there was a point very early on where the performance, it was not a performance anymore. So how is that for you as a performer to move past that line into a genuine human experience?
Yeah, and Louis, you tell me if you ever want to say anything, but otherwise yeah, well, so for me, I'm not an actress at all. I'm a shit actress. And so it was all very, very real for me. I think up until just literally the very final moments of the film is when there's any amount of like acting or performing. From the very beginning, even so, like, before we filmed the very opening sequence, because actually, and this isn't really spoiled, the very opening sequence is you just see a van, like footage from a GoPro of me in a van. And I had Louis, before I went into the van, just take a second with me to kind of like put me in the headspace and, beat me around a little bit. And so then I was like, okay, I'm like there, and then I'm being chucked into the van, and you don't even see it, but I'm actually bound in the van, and I'm like taped up and everything. And so the whole experience is completely real for me, and I fully tap into this headspace. And so I don't feel like there really is a threshold in which I think once I begin, I'm very much there. And the intensity of the acts that we're doing forces me to stay there. So yeah, I think that would be what I'd say. There was...
Yeah, just one
I
simple
think
question.
there's somebody...
Yeah,
First,
I was one of the torturers, and I just want to say, as the person holding down Hannah, like, it was very real holding down Hannah. Like, she is not actually, I had to hold her down. Like, this is not like, oh, we're just pretending. Like, I was holding her down because she did not want to be there. Of course she did, but she was actively struggling not to be in that space. So it was very real, but also it was a play.
And then you had...
Yeah, just shortly, I mean, as you talk about consent, aftercare, love, whatever, I mean, and whatever it is, but I'm just wondering, will this movie just stay in the Bedside production thing? Because I was just thinking, I'm just worried, does it have a life outside of the Bedside? Because the Bedside is actually the frame that provides the thing about consent.
Yeah.
So if it has a life for itself, then it could get into the hand of somebody who would look at it in a very different way. I'm just...
I'm going to give the floor to Anne.
Yeah. We've been thinking a lot about this. I mean, it is definitely going to be shown at festivals dealing with horror, splatter, porn, where it will be contextualized by the stage it's shown on. But we are planning like the online versions that might get ripped and shown out of context.
Yeah.
We're going to put watermarks on so you can always trace it back to Bedside, but we will not be adding like the other interviews directly to the work. It stands by itself, but we are thinking about how to secure that whoever finds it can get back to our website and read about it and see the interviews.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is tricky.
Yeah.
It's super tricky.
Super tricky.
And part of me also wants to say that whoever takes it out of context is solely responsible for doing that. But of course, that doesn't help for the person who might be viewing it out of context.
Yeah.
But if you have great ideas, but we are trying to show it maybe through platforms we can control and trying to quantify.
Well, how much of the acts are a surprise? Did you know which day you were going to get kidnapped?
No, that was a surprise. And I knew everything roughly that would go down, because I think, as much as I love surprises, in fact, my darling husband surprised me for my birthday with a kidnapping, which is wonderful. I think when you're making something like this, there's already such an intensity in terms of like what you have to process and go through, that it's good to have some amount of preparation, like mental preparation, so that you at least know, okay, I know there's just this much going on, or I know that these things are going to happen, and
What mental preparation did you do on the day? Did you just wake up, have breakfast, and then be like, around 1 o'clock it's gonna
kick off? No, I think for me it was pretty much just that. I was like very excited, and it was this long process of planning it and working on it, and so I felt very excited and very like ready to do it. But yeah, what about you? Did you prepare?
I think a lot of we had like 3 months maybe, where we planned everything, so that was like the big preparation. And then on the day, I think we were here a couple hours before we shooting, just checking in with each other and like talking a lot about how going over the plan again and again, and before we like set up and waiting for it to be dark enough so we could film, and yeah.
I just remembered another funny thing from the day. On that day at Bolsjefabriken, there was like a dub festival. So like while we were sitting, getting ready, and we were sitting down, all of us having like a pre-filming chat, and being like, it was this really tender moment where we're like, okay, we're gonna do this, whatever, and there's just like loud dub music playing behind us. It just like, and we were almost like, oh god, I hope you don't hear it in like the film, and it was so surreal and hilarious and bizarre. But yeah, just wanted to share that. So.
Yeah, and Morten?
So the soundscape of the movie is quite, I guess you could say, subjective. I mean, it induces a lot of emotions. What were your thoughts on that in regards to having, as opposed to just having the experience done by itself?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting, especially because I have my own associations with all of the things that I saw, or that happened in it, and I think that the soundscape does a good job of being pretty ambiguous emotionally, but still having these swells of emotion. So I don't really know. I feel like I'm more curious about how the audience interprets that and those emotions, and what you might feel or what you might think I feel at those times, and as well how much of it is dictated or affected by the audio. I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, one thing I remember back after filming it, and we were like watching it through, and it got like when like the picture cut was done, and me and Hannah was on a video call watching the movie on each our place. So it was like during COVID actually.
Yes.
And at some point we muted it to like talk about something, and then it became so much stronger, like seeing it muted than like seeing it with like all the screaming.
Exactly.
And then we was like, oh, we should remove some of the sound. Like that's it gets bigger when you remove it.
Yeah. Especially I remember seeing there's a part, the part where there's the nail going into my side, and I'm like screaming, and I was watching that without the sound, and I was like, it's actually so much more terrifying seeing this silent scream, because you see that I'm like screaming, you can see it in my throat and in my face, and there's just no sound, and it was really intense. So, but the sound really changes everything.
I have a little question related to that. I was thinking, how is it watching back now? When you see it, you've probably seen it 1,000 times now, but what does it feel like for you watching it, and for you, David, of course, when you see this experience?
Mostly it feels like it was ages ago. Like I feel like 2 years ago, yeah. So like it's a lot happened, and like we moved a lot of
Bigger muscles.
Yeah, bigger muscles. And yeah, back then I met Hannah like 3 or 4 months earlier, and now we've like been friends for like years. I feel like so like yeah, a lot of stuff happened, and that definitely put everything into perspective.
Yeah, and for me, I was mostly again thinking, God, I didn't realize I screamed so much. But no, it's really, I mean, I still get a lot of emotions every time I see it, and many different ones. And it's like most of the time when we've gone back and watched it, especially like as a group, we're laughing a lot, which is quite funny. Like, I even had to stifle 1 or 2 laughs during this, because it's just like I'm remembering like, oh my God, that part sucked so bad, or like that was this or that, and so it's really mixed. And now this time watching it in a room full of people who had never seen it before, I was like, fuck. This is actually really intense, and I hope everyone watching it is okay. Because like it's very different when you come to it without the context of all the preparation and all of these talks and everything. You're just watching this horrible, horrible display of like the brutal torturing of a woman. It's a lot. It's really a lot. So yeah, I hope you guys are okay.
You talked a little bit about it, but just regarding the sound editing and the effects and the music and stuff, like I love that the film feels so authentic, and that there's no backstory, no prologue, and there's no aftercare, and actually the sound's the only thing that takes it away from being like a edited video by the guy. Yeah. So when did you decide to add on extra music, and was it ever like an idea to just have the total like raw sound?
I don't, honestly, when it comes to the sound stuff, I mean, I feel like Anne-Sophie would know more about that, because at that point, I wasn't as much involved with the creative decisions of the project. I mean, of course, I could have a say in it if I wanted to, but we went through a couple different options of like people who might do the sound, or and that changed throughout. And I think at some point, like, we knew we wanted someone who did some sort of noise to do it. But no, I really think it was just whoever we ended up having. I forget who asked if who was it? Yes, and yeah. So when she did it, it was just like, well, just do what you want to do. Is that right? Would you say? What do you? I don't know. I can't really speak on it as much.
The process looked a bit like this. We presented what our initial thoughts were, but also said, I mean, like, bring your flavor to it. And then the process was very much stripping down from that quite on. So adding more breaks in between, adding less, making it even less cinematic than it was. But I mean, it's definitely like a bunch of ideas coming together, and I know that you have an idea, because we see that, and this is like a film that's meant for the screen, but we might also do a second version that's going to be like completely wrong.
Yeah, I really want to do that where
Exactly.
where we do
Where it's like just
like 2 hours long.
yeah.
You laugh, but I'm completely serious. That's also like the insect style stuff is like an hour and a half, 2 hours. No music, just like really raw and really just you're looking into a room of a woman being tortured.
And that
And
would be
it's-
like a completely different edit also.
Yeah, yeah,
That would be
Yeah.
difficult.
really different thing.
I'm curious, for you, in the mindset of the torturer or torturers, like it's obviously very real for you, Hannah, but how real was it for you guys? And what kind of aftercare was involved for your position? Like, I know the feeling of being a dom and feeling guilty the day after what you've done to someone that's asked you to do it.
I think it's a very good question, yeah. I think it made it a lot easier knowing that it wasn't just a scene, but it was a scene that we planned 3 months in advance. And that definitely helped with like the after guilt that you usually get when you're done.
You do say usually, but you know.
But you also, sometimes you get it. But yeah, I mean, I had check-ins with Hannah for both our sakes afterwards, several days after. I can't remember what day we met her after, but we were in like contact like every minute after for a long time.
And then Sebastian.
Yeah, I just want to add, like, when you watched Hannah through that, I was, even though I saw Hannah struggling, I was completely sure that Hannah was in control of herself. Like, Hannah is very, very, very strong as a personality, and I knew Hannah a bit earlier than Louis, but it was just like I was feeling, because I was way out of my level with this. Like, this was not my film at all, but I felt very secure with Hannah there. Also, the whole crew, first of all,
But it's
was
serious
super.
stuff you're playing with, and
Very-
stuff can happen, and
Exactly.
So
But I
it's-
trusted Louis as well with what he was doing, but mainly I trusted Hannah because Hannah just brought a very calm, even though she's screaming loudly, she also made the thing feel very calm and secure and safe. I felt very safe there.
Yeah, I also want to add to that the same, that I don't think I would have done something this intense with anyone else than Hannah, probably. At least with anyone that wasn't like that good at communicating needs and desires.
Also, I think that a lot of it is that we talked about the risks, and because we are playing with really serious stuff and dangerous things, and so we try to imagine all of the things that could possibly go wrong, so it's not that we're like, well, we'll just figure it out, and, we'll just expect everything to go well. We have, we discuss, okay, what are the things that could go wrong? How do we mitigate the risk? And what we're practicing here is very much, there's different models of consent and risk within kink. And one of these is RAC, which is risk-aware consensual kink. And that the idea around RAC is that you know that what you're doing is risky, everything that we, like, you know, you get into a car and you know you're taking a risk, and the main thing is that you are being informed of what those risks are so that you can deal with these risks and mitigate these issues and take responsibility for those situations. So we all feel very prepared to handle the risks involved. Yeah. And we only have a couple minutes left, so if anybody has any final questions, I think there's one.
Yeah, so first of all, I really like hearing your version, Hannah, of what was happening, because it's intense to watch, so it's really nice to hear from like a woman's perspective. And then on a lighter note, I just want to hear from you, Louis, what is on your dick?
You can choose not to answer that, of course.
I will answer that. I have silicone implants, in my dick, that you can see later on. Also, if you come up to me later and ask, you can touch. I have them on my hands as well. Not the dick, but you can touch it. Was that a good enough answer?
Yeah, that's okay.
We're going to wrap it up now, so I just want to take a moment to thank both Hannah and Louis for being so open and sharing with us this evening, and thank you very much for a very intense but very super interesting experience. Thank you.